I say big up 99, saying lack of spirituality, homelessness, starvation, disrespect for the children and the elders. Man, I say, rig up 99, man.
Yeah, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the phone with Mr. Leon Collier. On the Sir Squeezeback show in the past, you saw we did an interview with an author, Life Struggles of a Vietnam Veteran, and the pen name Christopher Rollins. Well, while reaching out to Mr. Collier, I found out that he was affected by the COVID, and him and his wife, so we reached out to him to try to get an interview done. But being that the situation how it is now, we're trying to do this over the phone. So we're on the phone now with Mr. Collier. So we're going to just try to do this interview over the phone to see how he's doing and how he coped with the situation. Greetings, Leon.
Good morning. How are you doing, Robert?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you feeling?
I'm good, much better. I'm in the recovery stage right now, so I think I'm on the road to recovery pretty soon. In a couple of more months, I'll be back to full.
How is your wife?
She's okay. She got recovered before I did because she had the virus before I got it.
So do you find out where did she get it from?
Yes. Her brother works in the hospital, and he works in housekeeping, and actually he's the one that goes around and clean up all the rooms of all the patients. And my understanding that he was not wearing the proper PPE, and he got it very bad. So she rushed over to help him out, and he gave it to her, and she came up and gave it to me.
Did he recover from it?
Yes, but he had it really serious. He had to take oxygen, and then he had to go to therapy to sort of walk again. But he's home now. Matter of fact, he got home last night. Yesterday, really.
Okay, and how did you go to the hospital when you got it, you and your wife?
No. I personally didn't want to go to the hospital. I said, don't take me to the hospital unless you see that there's no other hope. And we use a natural selection. You gave me to nurture me through the process. So I did not go to the hospital.
Okay.
I didn't want to go because I didn't want to be put on any kind of ventilator or be intubated. I just wanted to fight it on my own.
Okay, so what were some of the symptoms that you experienced when when this started to affect you?
Everything. I mean, I had the worst of the worst. I had shortness of breath. I had high fevers, headaches, severe coughing. Everything that you could think that it can give you. Attack of your heart. Everything.
What do you think when you first found out that you had it? What was the first thing that you did or try to do to try to combat it?
Well, the first thing that I now have to think back on it, that let me know that I had it. I do a lot of walking, maybe 2 or 3 hours of walking during the daytime, and I noticed that my nose was running. And then at that time when I was doing all the walking, my wife had come down with it. She had a lot of coughing and fever. So at that point in time, I said, she kept on saying it was not the virus, but then I said we gotta separate and quarantine each other because I thought that she had it, and I was beginning to show that my nose was running. And then once we got quarantined, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything: fever, headaches, chest pains, coughing, all in 9 yards.
Did you reach out to the VA at that time?
I tried to The VA actually, and I just got to talking to them now before you called me. It was very, very difficult. I was disappointed. People that reached out to quite naturally was not there. They were home, but I left different messages for different people, and apparently they didn't answer me on calls. And eventually, my primary doctor at the VA, she did return my call, and I said, I got this very bad virus, but at that time I was almost through the virus. And he said, well, I got to get in here for testing. And when I went for testing, I was tested negative, but I went through the whole experience before they contacted me from the VA. So they didn't give me any kind of help at all. And I was complaining today about how mad and upset I am about this whole process.
Wow. You know what, though, Leon? I'm glad that you were able to fight it off and that you're here with us to be able to share your experience with us. You know, I hope from now on, you know, from this point on, because you're in contact with the VA now, correct?
Yes, I am.
Or do you feel that they are going to be assisting you in any way?
Yeah, well, actually, I think they are, because what I did yesterday, I called the Washington House, and there's a top veteran VA in that section over there, and I complained to him, and based upon that, everything is moving really rapidly now. But that was my last resort, to call Washington VA hotline.
Okay. Let me ask you this, though. I you know, given the fact that you are a blind veteran, and if the COVID impacts folks who are not blind or have certain disabilities, it must have been more difficult on you. How did you deal with that, being that you are a blind veteran and you haven't been able to make contact with the group that you've been so much involved with, the Blind Veterans Association?
Well, I have to say that not part of the VA, but in the VA hospital, they have a research program that's called BPA, and that is a research that I joined because they look at veterans my age who has been wounded and experienced Vietnam combat. And yet, they contact me in the middle of my worst sickness, and the initial contact was really to give me a survey. And I said, I can't do it. I almost feel like I'm dying. And based upon that, they responded immediately. They had all kind of doctors calling me and talking to me and walking me through it. They said, we can't do it at the VA, but we're gonna assist you. We're gonna help you through it. So they was a great asset for me and my family.
That's the Blind Veterans Association.
No, it's a totally different organization that does research for veterans who join that program.
Okay, through the VA.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a positive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. So, Leon, listen, I really, really appreciate you talking with us today, man. And if there's anything that you would like to share with the public, you know, about your experience further than what we have talked about thus far, this is the time.
Well, I think that's going to be something. My experience is something that I really can't put into words now. And it's a very dramatic and difficult experience. I almost died, and I just have to say right now, only God saved me. So I'm going to probably write about this sometime later on in the future, but it was a very, very bad experience, and I just can't find the words right now to describe what I went through.
Thanks and praise. Give thanks and praise that you're able to acknowledge the powers of the Most High. Thank you, Leon. And I pray
Okay.
I pray for you and your wife, and peace and blessings to you, and thank you again, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
The one track mind, this a one track mind. One track mind, come catch you one track mind. So 1999 for we use we mind. Robbing for $1, some robbing for a dime. End up in a jailhouse, have to serve some time. Jaja we savor, yes we glory divine. Them they who no believe them say we wasting we time. Watch all the people them on the lunch line, the lunch line, crack a line.
Peace and blessings to the world. Today is May 13th, 2020, and we're still dealing with the COVID-19. I thought by now all the world leaders would have gotten together collectively and discuss how their country, their communities, their states, their villages are being affected by the COVID and how they're dealing with it, how they're coping with it, steps they have taken, what's worked and what have not worked, and then collectively as a human family come to one consensus in how to approach this problem and how to fix this problem. You know, the Creator gives us everything that we need to sustain ourselves right here on this earth. And one of those things is the responsibility to manage this as one of the creatures on this earth who have been deemed with the abilities to accept, understand, and deal with feelings. And no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter what your financial status is, what class or all that stuff, this situation impacts us all. And the world leaders need to come together, religious leaders need to come together, regardless of what your faith are, and see how we can collectively fix this problem and move on with a new focus, not to return back to where we were. I heard the governor says we should build bridges and buildings, and but for what though? What other purposes? Look at the atmosphere. Look how the earth has responded to this situation. So when we adjust our lifestyle, we should adjust it to accommodate the primary needs of the children and the seniors. So we see now, we're hearing that the COVID has now beginning to affect the children. While they showed that they were able to fight it off and develop a strong immune system against it, other ailments are now surfacing, which were there before. Those things were there before. But so what are we going to do now that it's affecting the children? Because if it affects the children, we're talking about mankind in general. So you got to realize it's time for us to make the right, the proper, the correct, the only realistic decisions to make in these things is that we got to get together collectively as one family. You know, we went by Gary's J&N Pharmacy on 167th Street in the Bronx the other day to pay homage to him for being on the front line, because I know for a fact that during this episode my parents have been affected. There were a time my mom developed a fever and we couldn't take her to the hospital. So having a pharmacy that knows us and knows the client, being my mom and dad, was very, very, very helpful. So we went by to pay homage to them, and in the process of doing that, he shared with us a situation whereby some of the medications that were being honored prior to COVID, the prices on them have gone up, and the compensation that they received for filling or honoring these prescriptions, those have not gone up, so they are left losing. So we went by to talk to him, and in the process of doing that, we found out that the inner city where black folks and Hispanic folks are more affected by the COVID. And we tried to find out what the reasons for that were, being that the onset of this disease was not nowhere close to the so-called hood. So how did it end up in the hood like that? And he shared with us that due to the services or lack of services within the inner city in these communities, the impact later down the line will have a greater toll in those communities, and that's what we are now seeing. I'm asking all of those who are in earshot of this footage at this time to pay close attention to the environment, pay close attention to the changes in the temperatures. The Creator is speaking to us. It doesn't matter what faith you have, who you believe in. At the end of the day, we all live on this earth. And when you see situations like you see in Georgia, those problems are deeper than just Georgia. It's a national problem. You know, when you separate people by color and you bring children up in that environment, because garbage in, garbage out, and their behavior reflects that. So, you know, in different countries all over the world, you see black folks are treated in a different way, you know. And even that color black has been assigned to me. I'll accept it, but I feel we are one human family. I want to thank you for tuning in today and continue doing the right thing and giving thanks and praise to the Most High. One love. Manasi. I saw you go.
Watch all the people, them
One track mind, this a one track mind. 1999 for use my mind. One track mind, this a one track mind. 1999 for use my mind. Rob me for a dollar, rob me for a dime. End up in a jail, have to serve some time. Rob me for a dollar, rob me for a dime. End up in jail, have to serve some time.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. We have a situation in this country that is not just in this country. It's an international problem all over the world. If you're on the darker side of the rainbow, you're treated differently. And I would ask the question, psychological warfare, sociological tactics. Everything that is black has a negative association to it. It's called a connotation. In the English language, a word has two parts defined as a denotation, which is the actual definition, and a connotation, which is an ascribed meaning. A brief example of such is black cat, bad luck, black ice. It's not black, but it has a destructive outcome. Black box. The box is not even black, it's orange, but it has a negative outcome. So I say the issue is black and white. If we get rid of people being defined as being black or white, and what happened to the middle? We don't even talk about the middle. Aren't they human beings too? So Mississippi was once one of the richest states in the country, in the Union. And the issue behind Mississippi was slavery, but the overall issue was not slavery, it was money. Money was the main issue. So when Mississippi lost out and the East took over, there is still a form of slavery going on, and the African American or the black American, the issue with them has been addressed. It was addressed by President Lincoln, and he was assassinated, and it was addressed by President John F. Kennedy, and he was assassinated. I would like to ask you to check out a clip that we're going to put up that President John F. Kennedy spoke on the issue of civil rights. And civil rights should be just that, civil rights. When you hear the word civil rights, it should be about the struggle. It shouldn't be about anything else that has attached itself to civil rights that is doing the same thing now with Black Lives Matter. We say all lives matter, because if we are going to say Black Lives Matter, the folks that we are saying you haven't been treating us right, what are they to say? Oh, we're going to turn things over to you now so you could put us in peril the way you put us in peril? The key, ladies and gentlemen, is forgiveness. And America, the world, the former colonists, you have already been forgiven. But what you going to do with it? What you going to do? Please check out President John F. Kennedy clip, and thank you for tuning in. I saw you go.
Now an address by the President of the United States, speaking live from Washington.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This afternoon, following a series of threats and defiant statements, the presence of Alabama National Guardsmen was required on the University of Alabama to carry out the final and unequivocal order of the United States District Court of the Northern District of Alabama. That order called for the admission of two clearly qualified young Alabama residents who happened to have been born Negro. That they were admitted peacefully on the campus is due in good measure to the conduct of the students of the University of Alabama, who met their responsibilities in a constructive way. I hope that every American, regardless of where he lives, will stop and examine his conscience about this and other related incidents. This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Today we are committed to a worldwide struggle to promote and protect the rights of all who wish to be free. And when Americans are sent to Vietnam or West Berlin, we do not ask for whites only. It ought to be possible, therefore, for American students of any color to attend any public institution they select without having to be backed up by troops. It ought to be possible for American consumers of any color to receive equal service in places of public accommodation, such as hotels and restaurants and theaters and retail stores, without being forced to resort to demonstrations in the street. And it ought to be possible for American citizens of any color to register and to vote in a free election without interference or fear of reprisal. It ought to be possible, in short, for every American to enjoy the privileges of being American without regard to his race or his color. In short, every American ought to have the right to be treated as he would wish to be treated, as one would wish his children to be treated. But this is not the case. The Negro baby born in America today, regardless of the section of the state in which he is born, has about 1/2 as much chance of completing a high school as a white baby, born in the same place on the same day. 1/3 as much chance of completing college. 1/3 as much chance of becoming a professional man. Twice as much chance of becoming unemployed. About 1/7 as much chance of earning $10,000 a year. A life expectancy which is 7 years shorter, and the prospects of earning only half as much. This is not a sectional issue. Difficulties over segregation and discrimination exist in every city, in every state of the Union, producing in many cities a rising tide of discontent that threatens the public safety. Nor is this a partisan issue. In a time of domestic crisis, men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics. This is not even a legal or legislative issue alone. It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right. We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the Scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay? 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free. They are not yet freed from the bonds of injustice. They are not yet freed from social and economic oppression. And this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not be fully free until all its citizens are free. We preach freedom around the world, and we mean it. And we cherish our freedom here at home. But are we to say to the world, and much more importantly, to each other, that this is a land of the free, except for the Negroes? That we have no second-class citizens, except Negroes? That we have no class or caste system, no ghettos, no master race, except with respect to Negroes? Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise. The events in Birmingham and elsewhere have so increased the cries for equality that no city or state or legislative body can prudently choose to ignore them. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south. Where legal remedies are not at hand, redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, and protests, which create tensions and threaten violence and threaten lives. We face, therefore, a moral crisis as a country and a people. It cannot be met by repressive police action. It cannot be left to increase demonstrations in the streets. It cannot be quieted by token moves or talk. It is a time to act in the Congress, in your state and local legislative body, and above all, in all of our daily lives. It is not enough to pin the blame on others, to say this is a problem of one section of the country or another, or deplore the facts that we face. A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all. Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality. Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act, to make a commitment it has not fully made in this century to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law. The federal judiciary has upheld that proposition in a series of forthright cases. The executive branch has adopted that proposition in the conduct of its affairs, including the employment of federal personnel, the use of federal facilities, and the sale of federally financed housing. But there are other necessary measures which only the Congress can provide, and they must be provided at this session. The old code of equity law under which we live